This is the Business Storytelling Podcast with Christoph Trapp, available on Google, Spotify, Apple, Pandora, and other podcast channels. Want to play it on your iPhone? Just ask Siri to play the Christoph Trapp Business Storytelling Podcast, also available on Alexa. Here's Christoph with today's episode.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Business storytellers, thanks for joining me another live stream of the Business Storytelling Podcast. I do have to give a shout out to Max Brandstetter. I have to remember to not yell into this microphone. Do you know how hard that is to not do that? Because you're so used to doing that. I mean, seriously, I listened to a show from the other day and I'm like, why am I screaming? Why? Hear me? You can hear me okay, right? Anybody in the audience, you can hear me. I'm sure you can. Everything sounds fine. I'm talking normally. I'm not giving myself a headache. So as you are doing live streaming, keep that top of mind. You don't have to be so annoyingly. We have a return guest. And as you know, we don't have very many return guests. We've had Joe Polizzi. We've had Jackie Clemens. We've had other people. I don't remember everybody else now. Lyron Sege, he's coming back on the show. But today's guest, Dave MacDonald, he was on the show previously to talk about cartoons in marketing. Today we're going to be even more specific. As you can see over here on my right, I suppose that's your right too, right? Yeah, that's how it works. My new book is coming out, Going Live. Fantastic. The crew over on Amazon Live, Twitter, YouTube, it's been fantastic. I use Switcher Studio. In case you guys haven't seen that, this is my production studio, and I don't know how I would have ever done it without that kind of production. Then Switcher, of course, goes to all the different channels. So if you tuned in on the beginning, I showed some of the cartoons that Dave has come up with, and they're on his Instagram account. If you want to check him out, he can tell us what the Instagram account is. I don't really want to get out of the graphic right now. You saw them when I wasn't switching away because I was then it's to not to stay on one screen. So let's get him on the show here. Let's hear from Dave. Why cartoons on live streams, and how do you use them? I mean, do you use do you use GIFs? Do you use animation? How do you make it all work? Let's get him out of the green room here on the show. Dave, it's good to have you back. Really appreciate you making the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me back, bud.
It's yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate it. So tell me about how would you use cartoons on live stream? So right now, I mean, I obviously showed, let's see if I can pull it back up here. While we're on here, there's just too many buttons. People are used to me saying that because there are a lot of buttons. But, I shared some of your cartoons, and I can certainly do that directly on screen too, right? I mean, I could just take this cartoon and throw it up full screen at the beginning or to illustrate a story. But you tell us, what are some things people should consider and think about?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the two big ones there is, as you alluded to just a second ago, was it kind of helps deliver a message. That's what art does. That's what cartoons do, where they take words and thoughts and they put them in a picture that's usually a lot easier to kind of digest and kind of understand what's at play there. And then you actually sent me a message, I want to say it was a few days ago, and I never thought of it this way, but going live is your most human form. You can't edit this. I mean, if you're going to get a hiccup here or there, you're going to slur on your words. It's tough. It's a human form of it. Then cartoons, I think, can also play in a way where they can help tell your story as you're going along, almost like a filler. And it's a really, really effective filler.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of interesting for sure, because you can just put it up and, sometimes it's easier to look at something than just see somebody talk about it. So you can really, you can take your live stream to kind of a different level. Now, the one thing that's a little bit more interesting is you have to plan maybe a little bit more. So for example, as you know, when I do a show, I just go, hey, Dave, you want to come talk about whatever? Let's, hey, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. So that works to an extent. But if I wanted to show your your content, like this one right here, I know we're just kind of pulling it up from Instagram, but that's not possible if I want to really truly integrate them, right? I mean, I gotta put some more planning time in than what I do now.
Yeah, I mean, it's it kind of goes probably you and others that host podcasts. It's just show prep at that point, right? It's like you're putting together any presentation or pitch. You just want to have things laid out, and cartoons work when they're tied to the right message at the right time, and that's why they're so powerful. That's why they're so useful. You can throw a bunch of cartoons here in a presentation, and they may not click because they're just at random spots. So preparation is huge, particularly when you're just trying to add some still images. I see a lot of people out there doing more live drawing, so that's really cool. There's a company out there called the Sketch Effect, and that's what they do. They did a lot before COVID, actually in person with people, and I know they're doing some digitally now. But that's another fun way when you're live streaming at an event that they kind of illustrate the words that are happening through the show.
So that's actually a very interesting comment, because so when I think it was like Content Marketing World and maybe some others, and basically, somebody was drawing. I don't know if I can pull up an example quickly here or not, but they were basically doing a cartoon, or they were drawing what you were talking about. So that's actually is that another option that you could envision? Like, so basically I'm interviewing a guest. So the guest and me, we're on the two screens like you and I are now, and then the other screen could be you doing a live drawing of something.
It is. It's something I've been looking into. I've got two good friends that do it now, and I've always fascinated by it. So a lot of times just getting the right tech and your hookup. But you're right. I mean, it can make a live event a lot more fun, a lot more engaging when you're using cartoons or any type of drawing for that matter to pull the material together. But so live drawing through a show would be really cool to do.
So, I mean, that's just a fascinating thing, actually. And how would that work? So we have a topic, right? So we're talking, and not just the top. We have to actually have a topic, but how long would it take? So, for example, I'm always amazed when they put that together, and maybe I can find an example here while we're talking or while you're talking. But you're talking. They don't know what I'm talking about at all, right? Because they're listening to the thing the first time as well, and then they're drawing something that kind of represents what you talked about for the most part. Every once in a while I saw stuff, I'm like, I don't know where they got that or how that's a representation, but it happens, right? We're all human. I mean, or maybe I slurred my speech or something, they didn't hear what I said. But how long do you have to talk to actually pull that off, or walk me through that process? How would that work, I guess?
I can, like I said, it's something I'm looking into now, but in terms of planning out and foreseeing it, it could easily be as, say you have a webinar that you're doing on X. And for us hooking up, just going through a template of what are the main 5 to 10 points you're trying to achieve at that webinar. And at that point, for me, that's the material. So as an artist, now I know the key points that you're trying to articulate. And then when you're going through the presentation, then it's kind of just ad-libbing. And then it's a lot of active listening on my end to make sure I'm listening for those points that we had talked about beforehand. And as long as I'm able to kind of tie those in, it could be a presentation that's 10, 15 minutes. It could be an hour long, but it comes back to being able to listen for those key points. And then if you're ad-libbing or you're kind of going off on a tangent, seeing what nuggets that you're speaking about that can be pulled back in. And then just coming together with a nice little takeaway. Because, I mean, we've all been to the presentations where it's super valuable, you want to get there, and you're either forgetting what was spoken about, or you're viciously taking notes and then trying to reread those afterwards. Where having live drawing and some of the art that those companies created, it's cool because you sit there, you're present for the presentation, and then you have this visual representation of what you just listened, and now it's triggering cues like, oh yeah, they did talk about that. I see that. So I can see exactly how that would play out. But it would definitely be, again, little prep time of 5 to 10 bullet points that are important that you want your audience to hear, and then kind of we're kind of dancing at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, you can see here I put up one of your animations from Instagram, and that's really some of those things you can have up. And even now, we did this early on. Let's see, we got a question here. I'm too far away from this monitor. A fast sketch or character storyboard artist could flow with you easy. Awesome. Hey, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you guys leaving comments here on Amazon Live. And of course, we are live on all the different channels. But so I don't know where I was going with that. Let's do the replay where I was heading here. But I mean, it does make things, they just look nicer, right? It's not just people looking at me, or I mean, you know, my guests, of course, are always easy to look at, or they look better than I do, but nobody wants to look at me. So when you create these, though, I mean, you could run them at the beginning. Like, I mean, we did this earlier on Amazon Live. We were just kind of hanging out for 8 minutes. Instead of people looking at us, you could just have a good looking animation or something, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we talked about it last time we met, but it's the humor effect is how it's called, and it's when things are funny, they're more easily recalled, and that's exactly how the cartoons can play in it. And this animation was a fun one to do, where it was just a simple little doodle, but it was enough. And it's when I draw them, I do a thing called the smirk test. So when I show my wife, she doesn't always get them. Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. But if she smirks, I know I'm onto something there, because it's a message that she's now getting. So when I'm creating them, we're definitely going for that little smile. But you're right, it's been a lot of fun creating just a little bit more action versus a still picture.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how do brands identify what content might work? I know we talked about that on the last show when we just talked about cartoons in marketing as a whole, but how do you identify? So, for example, as you know, I'm brainstorming here publicly out loud. I just think of this as a conversation with, an old friend I haven't talked to in a while, and now we got all these ideas. So, but I show, like, I don't want to say a PowerPoint, but basically a PowerPoint of some cartoons while people are watching, while people are waiting, or while they're showing up, which I know takes time. So that is the potential need for me, actually, when I'm just thinking about it. How about other brands? How do they know what they might need? How do they get there? How does it even come top of mind?
Well, I know we've mentioned it, and the biggest thing for me when it comes to why you use them and how to use them, it's, do you have something important to tell? And the main goal is make sure news that you can do that through. And humor in cartoons are one that's been widely used for eons at this point. So that's how a brand can think about it and use it. If they have a message that's really important that they want to get out, how can they do so in a way that's funny and memorable? And a cartoon can do that. I know even something as silly as the Super Bowl that just happened. Through one of my favorite commercials was the Cheetos commercial, and it was just a hilarious play on Cheetos, this old school song from, I think it was the early 2000s. But it was funny, it was memorable because we're still talking about it. And that's exactly what a brand could use a cartoon for. If they have something they want to share, bring some humor to it, because humor does sell. It's being able to laugh is very, very human. To circle back to what we talked about, why live streaming is so important.
Yeah, and sometimes what's interesting about humor, I mean, sometimes I look at cartoons and I don't get them, right? I don't get them. I'm not laughing, whatever. So not everything has to take off with everybody. So, for example, I ignored the commercials this year. I was watching football and I was checking Twitter during the commercials. I don't know if I watched any commercials, like maybe a couple, I don't remember very many. I watched Doritos, one of the Doritos ones, and all I could think of is how gross I thought it was that Ashton Kutcher and his wife, don't even remember her name now.
The Cheetos one, yeah.
Yeah, or Cheetos, right? And they had the stuff on their hands, and I'm like, oh, at least don't lick your hands. You know what I mean? Like, that's
the COVID world we're in, right? You can't give a high five without wondering where the sanitizer is.
Oh my God, there's no high fives. I don't know. I actually don't mind not having to touch people. So like the high fives or handshakes, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, quite frankly. But yeah, it's interesting how that works. So, but how do you? So when you go in and you talk to a brand about, hey, let's try some cartoons with your live streams and whatnot, like how do you sell it? How do you measure success? So for example, on live streams, we measure success based on people watching. On blog posts, are they ranking at some point? Are people paying attention? So how do we how do I get people on board that we need cartoons in our live streams, in our marketing? Give us your best pitch.
The best pitch. Well, I mean, the beautiful thing is I'm not inventing anything new. This has been around for quite some time. So you know that cartoons do work. They grab attention. You're seeing countless other people use them. And the question is, how and why would you use them for what you're trying to talk about? It's hard. When I first started this, I got into it because there are so many great people out there with messages or products that they're trying to share. And as amazing as the internet is in terms of reaching everyone now, you get so caught in the noise and the competitive nature of every other person doing the same type of thing that how can you stand out? So it comes back to when a brand wants to deliver a message, how do you differentiate? How can you be different than the next message that might be another cheese puff company that's trying to do the same type of pitch to get people to buy their products? And humor is always going to be one that's going to stand out versus anything else, in my opinion. But yeah, so if a brand is looking to use a cartoon, that's exactly it. How are you different? What can you do differently? And for me, the blessing is it's not like I'm teaching them or trying to pitch them anything they don't know of already. Because if you're on Twitter or on Insta or Facebook or whatever, you see this already happening.
Yeah, and that's an interesting story too. Honestly, is you can use those pieces everywhere. So that's one thing I like about it as well. You can use them on Instagram, you can use them with your articles, you can use them on your live streams. And what I actually found the most interesting about that story, Dave, is it is so hard to differentiate today. I mean, it truly, honestly is. And what happens is we need to find new ways to stay relevant, right? We need to find the next thing that works. And it's funny because you said cartoons have been around for a long time, and I'm presenting it like it's the new thing here. But it kind of is, because I don't see very many brands doing it, or not as many brands. So I'll give you an example. My new book is coming out, Going Live, right? It's available for pre-order. That's kind of what prompted us to think about this topic. And the reason I wrote it is because all kinds of brands are now doing podcasts. And podcasting, I think, still is a differentiator because there's still plenty of brands that don't do it. But the more brands do it, the harder it will be to stand out on podcasts only. So I said, what's the next step up from a podcast? It's a live stream. So guess what? In 6 months, we're going to sit here and we got all these people now doing live streams or whatever, right? They read my book and they say, oh, he's so right. We got to do a live stream. I mean, whatever, wishful thinking. But then what's the next level up, right? So the next level up to make your live stream differently. And one way to do that is by having cartoons, whether it's at the beginning, whether it's throughout. You could even, I'm thinking out loud here a little bit. You could even have, as we're both talking, have a new cartoon at the bottom. So the people that get tired of hearing us talk, they see a new cartoon that's kind of related to the topic, but it's another way to interact with people. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a quote that I like from Walt Disney, and he said, of all of our inventions of mass communications, pictures still speak the most universally understood language. So that's kind of always going to be in my back pocket as I continue to develop, this particular brand of Cartoon 1K, and I draw and I try to find ways to use that as a form of communication. There's so many different avenues, like you said, that's popping up. Clubhouse is another hot one everybody's talking about now. But I do think that pictures, in general, a picture is evergreen. It will always hold power, whether that's a digital picture you're seeing on your iPhone or that's something you're finding in the newspaper on Sunday morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have Phil Hill over on Amazon, and I now picked up my phone. It's a little easier to read than to read the monitor over there. So use all the tools at your when you get older, and you can't see things anymore. I have tried a cartoon hybrid whiteboard style in a recent YouTube short. I think YT is probably YouTube. And so that's another idea too. You could do like the whiteboard. I couldn't do that. I'd have to, hire you come and do the whiteboard behind me or something, because I mean, seriously, handwriting is terrible. Drawing skills are horrible. But that's another idea, right? You could have your next. That's kind of similar to what we talked about earlier, I guess. You could draw it up and make it look a little bit better and easier to remember than me just talking about it and using my hands.
Right. Yeah. Well, I have a YouTube channel, hopefully launching next month, and super simple concept. So the program I use to create cartoons is called Procreate, and they make everything so easy. And they actually have a feature on there that does a time lapse replay of your art. So it records every stroke of your pen that you're doing. So people have really resonated with wanting to see, oh, it's a cool cartoon, Dave, but how'd you do it? So that's been a lot of fun. So I'm working on a YouTube show of doing those time lapses, and I'll do it in slow time, and then I'll talk over how I'm doing it and kind of celebrating with a different craft beer every time. Crafted one cake.
With a different craft beer?
Yeah. It's always a little side hobby. I'm a home brewer as well, and the craft industry is fun. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to tie the two in a show where, again, gets a little bit more about Dave and who he is.
And is that what the name came? I know you told me this before. Is that where the name came from?
No, the name itself was Crafted 1K. So Crafted itself, I just like the word in terms of being able to create something. 1K came from Kevin Kelly. He wrote an ad ago about the power of 1,000 fans. Where if you're building a brand, you don't need millions upon millions of followers. If you have 1,000 true fans that believe in who you are and what you're creating, they're going to be your best sales reps. They're going to be your best customers. They're going to be the ones that are going to help put you on the map. So for me, the premise between Crafted 1K was craft these cartoons to get your 1,000 next fans. And that's really what you need to kind of move forward.
Awesome. And I know you can't read the comments, Dave, where you are, because there's just, I want Dave to look at the camera, focus on his part in the conversation, and not look at 10 places where you can read comments. So I'm trying to keep track of the comments just so you guys know how it's working. And it's kind of hard with all the different channels. But Phil said, first of all, that's awesome, Dave. I'll check it out. So I want to check that out too. When what's the name of the YouTube channel?
Well, right now it's just going to be under Crafted Dave. So
Crafted Dave.
It's the same handle I use for everything.
Crafted Dave. I'll see while you're talking here if I can throw that up for on YouTube. I'm pretty sure we got a social overlay. So then Phil also said it got pretty good traction. He's talking about what he did, the cartoon hybrid. I'm planning on trying a few more times and get my artist to produce a few more pics. So that's awesome. Talk about how do we get started with cartoons? They kind of come and go, but to an extent, so does everything, right? Like I do cartoons, I do something else, I do a live stream, I do a podcast, I do and then like you go in and out and you do things. So how do I build it in so it doesn't keep going out? Like it's just part of what we're doing.
Well, it's cartoons. If you look at it that way, it's a tool in your toolkit, right? You got a toolbox, and you've got a hammer and a wrench and a screwdriver and a saw, and all four of them do different things, but all four of them help you build the house. So that's exactly how I kind of view cartoons, where it's not the silver bullet. It just happens to be another tool that's in that toolbox that you can and you will need as you're building, what you're trying to build. And it kind of helps speed things along. Sometimes I look at it, if I use that same analogy, the difference between a screwdriver and a power drill. They're both going to do the same thing. One's just going to do it faster.
Yeah, you got to have the right tools in your toolbox. And I put up did I spell that correctly? Crafted 1K. I don't know if you can see the live feed or not, Dave. The YouTube channel.
The YouTube channel is going to be Crafted and then Dave.
Oh, Crafted Dave. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's just like I have for Instagram and Twitter and everywhere else.
Got it. Crafted Dave. And just in case you guys are wondering while you're watching here, I'm doing this live, as you can see, because I look down. I'm doing this live on Switcher Studio on my iPad. I got that spelled correctly now, correct?
Good.
So, unbelievable how you can do it. I would like to hire a producer one of these days because you push so many buttons. How do brands reach out to you? What are they? What kind of request? Like, who do you like to work with? Like, how do you start with somebody?
Well, right now, like the last like 6 months, it's actually been heavy in the training industry. So those that are either sales trainers or coaches or somebody that's training on other material, anybody that needs to train or teach something has kind of been the sweet spot recently. And then a lot of it comes through word of mouth, and LinkedIn's huge for me. I get a lot of opportunities through LinkedIn. And it's really people coming to me, like I talked before, they're trying to teach something and they want to help it stand out. They have an idea of a cartoon, they've seen a cartoon, maybe they saw something I posted, and they just wanted to kind of learn and talk more. They like how some of the cartoons that I draw, I usually do a single panel for a lot of them, and I take a simple quote or simple topic and make an image around that that's going to help that pop. I don't do many, 4 or 5 panels like you remember seeing on the newspaper growing up as kids. So I think a lot of them when they come to me, they like how simple, clear, and easy it is in a single picture versus something that's a little bit more drawn out. But that's kind of how they're finding me right now.
Social media, of course, is a great way to connect with people, as we both know. That's how we, of course, connected. I don't know how long ago.
Yeah.
And certainly that's how we've stayed in touch. And that's, I think you posted something on Instagram that caught my eye. And then I think you shared something as well. And so always good to catch up with you. Always good to hear these new ideas. I have to think about how I'm going to implement and try cartoons in my live streams. I guess it is better to have somebody who can create you something from scratch, right? Just because then you can, you can make it fit to what you need.
Yeah, obviously, I guess, on one hand, that's personal preference, but yeah, I'm definitely more of the non-stock in terms of making sure that message delivers. I'm sure there's stock cartoons out there that you can find that fit to what you're talking about. But again, when you're out there talking, you're teaching, you're discussing storytelling, your perspective matters. And having a cartoon crafted around that, like I said, it's another tool to kind of help build that brand out more.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys saw this earlier. The image I actually used over on Amazon was just the Facebook avatar of myself, and basically, I mean, that's a cartoon as well to an extent. It's kind of limited, of course. There's only a few options of how I can use it. But anyway, awesome. That's great to hear. And where are you located again? Remind us.
On the inner world, or in real life?
In real life.
In real life, we're in upstate New York. So I'm in a little village called Boston Spa. We're about 2.5 hours north of New York City. Okay, awesome. And then, so Phil says, Vicky has a question. Yes, Vicky, ask the question. Please ask it. Let me just respond to Vicky here. I don't know why she doesn't just ask. Phil says, I'm lucky my brother is one of the best caricature artists I know. Awesome. That's great to hear. And on the web, of course, it's always good. The other thing, though, is when you go to your family all the time. For example, one of my sister-in-laws, was a massage therapist. It doesn't mean she wants to give me a massage all the time, right? So it's just something to keep in mind as well. Coming to people, where can people find you on the web? On the web, it's crafted1k.com is the home base. If you go on there, I do a Saturday morning cartoon newsletter. So you sign up, you get new cartoons kind of every Saturday morning. I think of it like a fun way to start your weekend. Otherwise, Crafted Dave, like he has on the screen, I have it on pretty much every social channel you'll find me hanging out. Yeah, and it's kind of funny too, because Saturday morning, right? Saturday morning cartoons. Of course, many of us grew up that way. I'm Absolutely. Sure you thought about that way as well, just right? A little bit. Right. Awesome. Great. What we're going to do is we're done with the show. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. We're going to stay on Amazon Live just for a few more minutes here in case Vicky has any questions so she can ask them.